This is Mark, your host, and today I have a return guest. We're also doing this on video as well as the audio podcast, so that'll be fun. And my guest today has come back on the show. It's Molly DeVoss. She's a cat behaviorist out in Dallas who I met through a friend on Facebook and who helped us tremendously with our two older cats that we adopted after we lost our elderly cats. So Molly, welcome back.
Thank you. It's great to be on your show again.
It is. It's nice to see you.
It's good to see you. I know this is fun this time.
Instead of just on the microphone. Now, I had reached out to you because, well, first of all, I want to tell people that you have, your organization is called Cat Behavior Solutions. It's a nonprofit saving lives through innovation and ingenuity. We're talking felines here. The site and the work of Cat Behavior Solutions is dedicated to reducing cat shelter surrender by correcting and preventing behavior issues in the home. Your resources include Cat Talk Radio, which is a podcast that you do that I think is fabulous. We listen to it in the car a lot. A rich blog and social media, virtual and in-home consultations. So I'm going to, that's a brief there, but we'll just get into talking. And like I said, I met you because we had adopted first a cat that came from a hoarder home, and I was like, oh my God, she's got issues. And you were so helpful. So that's how we got to know each other.
Yeah. And I'm glad to hear she's doing so well.
Yes, and then her sister Peanut, who I also was worried Wilma would not let come downstairs because we put Peanut upstairs initially, and like Wilma wouldn't let her come down. I said, "Oh my God, I gotta call Molly." But it all turned out all right. And I had reached out to you last week because of this whole the pandemic and the self-isolating. And somebody had told me I don't know that I didn't read into it, but somebody told me that some people were abandoning their animals, feared that they might get sick, and I wanted to talk to somebody who could address the effect this is all having on animals.
Yeah, well, thankfully that is far outnumbered by the number of people coming forward to foster at this time and to adopt, because I think people are finding themselves stuck at home and lonely, and they want to help. And so it's amazing how the shelters are being cleared out in most communities by the overpouring of support. Now, I will tell you this recent news about the tiger in the Bronx Zoo coming down with COVID-19, that does have some people scared about, is this transmittable to or from felines? And I'd say remember that, first of all, tigers are a totally different family, different, sort of same species. Obviously, they're cats, but they're different cat lineage than your house cat. Mm-hmm. And there are absolutely nothing out there that is suggesting that we can catch COVID-19 from pets. So abandoning your animals at this point, in my opinion, would be a disgrace to both you and them, because they're there to keep you company while you're in your sheltering in place mode.
Now, do you think there's a strain on pets that are accustomed to taking people home all the time? That just popped into my head.
Definitely. Yeah, there's first of all, these animals are baffled about what's going on. Cats in particular, because cats are such routine addicts. They really don't do well when things change from day to day. They want to have everything very predictable all the time. And so now your normal schedule is all upside down and you're home a lot. And that's different. And a lot of people are thinking, well, my cat's getting tired of me being around. But it's not really that. He's just experiencing some extra anxiety and stress due to the fact that the schedule and routines have changed. Now, your dogs, they're probably really loving the fact that you're around more because they have evolved with more of a social hierarchy. Mm-hmm. So they rely a lot more on those relationships and think of you as part of the pack, and more importantly, a pack leader, someone that they need to please. And so having more opportunities to please you is great for a dog. And for a cat, there's none of that going on in their brain. They're just like, whoa, my routine is now changed. Mm-hmm. But I do think that they, quickly are settling into the new routine. And people need to think about that as they go back to work. The pets are going to also now have probably a level of separation anxiety that they didn't have before.
Yes, and I also, because some things I'm just thinking as we talk, I think it would be important, at least it is for me, not to, because this is a very stressful time for people, and I hope that people are careful not to pass that stress on to their animals. You know,
It's
to not take it out on your pets.
Yeah, and and even if you're not actively taking it out on your pets can pick up on your emotions so well. And so, whatever you're feeling, your animals definitely are picking up on in it, and that contributes to how they're behaving. So, do everything you can to take care of yourself, to stay centered and calm and peaceful during this. It's helpful to understand the things that we can't control.
Hmm.
We can't control the spread of this virus to everyone. We can't control a pandemic, but we can control how we react to it and our own levels of risk and comfort with that, and focus on gratitude, and all those things that help to keep you centered and balanced will also be picked up with by your pets.
Now, you had mentioned in an email that you were going to reach out and get some input from shelters.
Yes, yes. So I work, as you know, I work at the Dallas Animal Services, which is the third largest shelter in the country. And I work there part-time as a behavior specialist with the cats that are very shut down or aggressive when they come into the shelter. And so I have an inside view of what's going on there. And some of the things, going into this pandemic, we had a pretty good handle on our cat population in the shelter. We weren't at crisis mode, but we're right at the cusp of kitten season. But on the other hand, our dog occupancy was to the point where we were having to euthanize for space. So all of this was just a horrible, perfect storm for, being an ugly outcome for a lot of dogs. So we put out a community plea early that, we don't say this often, that, that we're euthanizing for space, because thankfully we haven't had to. And the community came forward. We had over 300, I think, dogs and cats go into foster home that first weekend before our sheltering in place order. And now that we have sheltering in place, most all shelters across the country have closed to the public and are doing tele-adopt, which means that, all their animals are online. And you call, and actually our adoption staff here has really gotten great at getting to know the animals' personalities, so that when you call and inquire about an animal, they can tell you quite a bit about them. And then when you decide to adopt, they actually bring the animal to you curbside. So it's curbside animal delivery. You never actually enter into the building. I know that here in Dallas, all of our on-site volunteer activities have been suspended. In Albuquerque, for instance, they have actually put out a COVID waiver and are still welcoming volunteers to come in and give enrichment to the animals at this time, as long as they maintain a 6-foot social distancing. In Dallas, we have split up our employees into two groups, two halves, and they don't overlap in days in the shelter, so that if someone were to break with the coronavirus, then it would only affect half of our staff would have to be quarantined and out of the shelter for 2 weeks. So we've done some things like that. We have also, real importantly, to control the population, is we've limited intake. So we're not really as aggressively out there picking up animals, because naturally we don't have the traffic to adopt them out to. We are absolutely still answering sick and injured and aggressive and those kinds of things calls, and any kind of emergency rescues that that need to happen and things like that. So we're making appointments for owner surrenders out into the future, and we're making resources available to people. So, one of the reasons, the reason why I started Cat Behavior Solutions is because shelter euthanasia is the number one cause of death in cats. And one of the main reasons people surrender cats to shelter is because of behavior problems, urinating outside the litter box, being aggressive either to the people or to other cats, and destruction. So resources like my organization and my services are being offered up to people that are trying to surrender pets at this time. So hopefully we can get those issues resolved and they don't keep their surrender appointment, in May or whenever we're going to be able to actually get back to that.
Now, curiously, how did you get into this?
Well, I got into this from volunteering at Dallas Animal Services. I've been there now over 12 years. And so when you witness so many cats being surrendered and watching the outcome, so many of them come in and they're, friendly, confident cats at home. But when they get in a shelter setting, the change in environment and the loss of control over their environment and things like that are just too much stress, and they shut down. A lot of times they get sick. They feel like people are going to attack them. It's loud, it's scary, and they don't act well, and they don't show well, and they don't become what we call very adoptable. Mm-hmm. So I started assessing behaviors of cats and being able to help them. And so I got education and went and got my certification to become a certified feline behavior specialist so that I could help work with those cats. And we do all kinds of things, classical conditioning. We do operant conditioning through clicker training. So now my nonprofit organization offers information through Cat Talk Radio and through my blog and things like that. And also through consults, virtual now. That's one of the things that's affected me. I'm not doing in-home consults during this, but I am doing virtual consults, much like we are meeting today. I have people take me around their home and show me litter boxes and things like that. And that works real well. So yeah, just being exposed to the problem, just that one statistic that shelter euthanasia is the number one cause of death in cats is, that's overwhelming, and that's really sad. I mean, why not kidney failure?
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's very sad.
And you obviously their behavior can be worked with and adjusted because that's what you do.
Absolutely, it can. Absolutely.
When we first got Wilma, I couldn't tell where she was going, where she was using the litter box because I had put it by the fireplace. I put her in the living room and I put it by the fireplace. And you had said she wants privacy. Put it behind, because she was using, I found out she was peeing on a pillow behind the TV. So you said, put the litter box back there. And that's all it was. It was that simple. She wanted her little space, her little private space.
Yeah. And it's because, when they use a litter boxes they're simple, but they're complicated. And technology makes them more complicated than they need to be with these robot litter boxes and self-cleaning and, trying to make them look like little mod furniture, top entrances. Cats did not want all that stuff. In fact, they really don't like that stuff. And all those kinds of things lead to them not using it. They really just want, a big open box. But at the same time, in the wild, when they're urinating or defecating, they're vulnerable. So they usually do it out in the open where they can see predators coming. Mm-hmm. But if you have a cat with a history like your cat, then you know that they need a little bit of coverage so that they're a little hidden from potential predators, which is wired in a cat's brain to always think that something's going to get them.
One of the Peanut, she'll eat and sometimes she'll look up. She was an outdoor cat. And I swear it's because she's keeping an eye on the sky.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah.
I just get that feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they have predators. I say a lot in my consults and in my radio shows and in my blogs that in the wild, what they do in the wild. And that is because they still have a 96% DNA linkage to their wildcat ancestors. And so what those cats do in the wild, really we need to simulate as close as we can in a home environment. And the more we understand how their little brains are wired, the better we understand how they behave. And exactly like you said, they have predators on all levels. They have, owls and hawks from the sky and from the ground, be anything from, poisonous snakes to, to coyotes and dogs and just all kinds of predators for them. So they are always thinking, what's going to get me next?
Just a couple more little cat things. I did discover too with Wilma. I had to take her to the vet for the first time. For like weeks, I was stressed out. How do I get this cat in a cat carrier? Because for a long time, I couldn't even pick her up. I can do that now, but I got a cat carrier with a top-loading cat. It's a top-loading cat carrier, and it was so much easier to just drop her down into it. So that they're not getting their claws stuck on the side of the entrance, and that's just a suggestion that I have for people as a top-loading cat carrier. I think it's less frightening for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I recommend the top-loading cat carrier, and that you leave it out in the home.
Oh yeah, I did that too.
Yeah, and if you have a cat that's particularly afraid of it, start feeding them in it, so that they get used to going in there and something good happening in there at classical conditioning at that point. And then you can even clicker train them. If you're target training your cat, you can target train them into the carrier. We do that a lot in shelters for cats that have particular carrier phobias, knowing that they've got to eventually go home in one. And then when you're doing that top loading, because we do that in the shelter all the time, we actually send cats home in a top loading cardboard box. But if you pick the cat up and you grasp the back feet with your hands and you grasp the front feet with your other hands so that the cat's back is against you, and then you just lean over so that the cat's still feeling you kind of hugging it, but you've got its feet so its feet can't go out and block the entrance into the carrier, and then you can just very easily lower them down in there. And put good stuff in there. Put a blanket that smells like them. Put catnip in there, anything that makes them feel more like they're at home in that carrier. And then the other thing, too, is don't make every carrier right about going to the vet, because they will absolutely associate that carrier with bad things. Yeah, so every now and then just load up and go on a little ride around the block and give lots of treats, stop and give treats and make it a fun adventure. And that way they'll never know if they're going to the vet or not.
My last cat thing, and then we'll sort of wrap up, is that furniture. That's a big thing, and I think it's a big reason people surrender cats. They have claws. Declawing is not an option. It's a horrible mutilation that's is not thinkable. They're going to scratch. That's what they do. They have to do that. Otherwise, the nails grow, and they'll grow into the cat's paw. Unless you're clipping them and all of that. But anyways, you can train them to, like our cats, they both use scratching posts. I find ones that they like, and they use them all the time. They still do this couches sometimes because they can't help it. But then you have I put tape, the transparent sticky tape, because we just got a new couch, and Frank was like, I don't want this couch ruined. I said, okay. So we put the tape on there, and it helps. I mean, I think they're always, to some extent, they're going to scratch on occasion. You can't stop it. If it's absolutely a deal breaker, do not get a cat. But you can train them to really minimize it.
Yeah, you can. And the important thing is, as you said, they have to scratch. It's what they do naturally. And again, this goes back to in the wild. So in the wild, they use scratching to mark their territory. So they will live in a big area, like about 6 city blocks, one cat, and they'll mark that territory with urine and feces, things that smell like themselves. Well, they also have scent glands between their toes. So when they're scratching, they're leaving scent marks behind, and then they're also leaving visual marks behind of the lines to show other cats that this is my territory. And scratching is usually not an issue in a one cat household. It's much, much, much more prevalent in a multi-cat household because they're doing those displays of this is my territory, well, this is my territory too, scratching in front of each other. And then it's very important, the other reasons they do it is because it gives them a back stretch. Then without that back stretch, it can lead to postural problems and back pain in later years. And so they've got to have that. And that means that that cat's got to have a full-on stretch. So think about how tall your cat is when it's standing up on its back legs. That's how tall your scratching post needs to be. A lot of people make the mistake of getting these little tiny scratching posts, and it's not big enough for them to get their stretch, so they'll go after the backs of the dining room chairs and things that are taller. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing to pay attention to is, a lot of cats like to scratch both horizontally and vertically. So I always recommend getting one of those horizontal cardboard scratching things. They love those. Yeah. Make sure, again, it's big enough and put catnip down in there and then get them a really tall scratching post and rub catnip on that, and they will usually attract to it. There's also Feel Away makes a product called Feel a Scratch that is has a pheromone in it that attracts them. So if your cat is not using the scratching post, you can just apply that to it, and that will attract them. And then the other thing on the deterrents, the tape is great. I made the mistake of using that once on a soft, buttery leather couch, and when I pulled the tape off, I totally destroyed my sofa. So another deterrent that I recommend is the plastic carpet runner material. It's clear plastic, and it's got little cleats on the bottom, and you put it over high traffic carpet areas. Well, you can get that in a roll. Make sure you get the kind where the little cleats are very close together, not widely spaced, and cut that out in the shape, put it around the corner of the couch or the arm of the couch. You poke holes in the corner of that material, and then you use upholstery screws to apply that to the couch. And that way, it's spiky, and they don't like the feel of that either. So that will also deter it. But anytime you put a deterrent, like you can't just use tape or spiky carpet runner material. And by the way, spikes out, obviously, not against the couch. But you can't use a deterrent without giving them a place to scratch. Because when you're trying to change behavior of a cat, you can't tell a cat no. You have to tell a cat what you want it to do instead. So if you say, not that, you got to go this. And without the this, you're never going to get to the not that. They'll just find something else to scratch because, as you said, they have to do it. It's just natural behavior for them.
Yes. Well, Molly, are there any final things you want to say?
Wow, let's see. We were talking about how this whole coronavirus pandemic had affected organizations, and I'm a trainer mentor for Jackson Galaxy's Cat Positive Pro, which is another nonprofit that provides training to shelters nationwide. And we go in, I'm a trainer mentor. I believe there's 6 of us, 1 in Canada and 5 in the United States. And we work with shelters all across the country. Shelters apply for a grant, and the shelters are teamed with one of us trainer mentors. And we teach them operant conditioning and how to work with some of these cats that are very stressed. And our semester runs from January through May every year. Well, of course, right in the middle of this program, this thing hits, and our shelters are closed down, and volunteers aren't able to get into the shelters, and staff has been reduced, and so we've had to pause the program. PAWS, by the way. we paused the program and are trying to figure out what to do. A lot of these places aren't going to be reopened until after the program, would have ended. So we're going to try to, all of us have agreed to stay on extra this year to extend and pick the program back up. And we're hoping that will become possible for our shelters that are participating. So it has affected absolutely every animal group out there. The rescue groups, have been just heroes, taking in lots of these animals from the shelters so that the shelters don't end up with an overcrowding situation. The public has just been superheroes and taking all these animals into their homes to allow for the shelter to deal with everything in a reduced staff capacity. It's been heartwarming to see all of the support coming forward. It really has.
Good. And by the way, you were recently named one of 12 extraordinary cat behaviorists in the country.
Yes, I was honored to be on that list. Thank you for noticing.
I did. And how can people find you? Your website?
You can find me at catbehaviorsolutions.org or cattalkradio.com. And you can email me easily, molly@cattalkradio.com. If anybody wants to reach out, please do. I'm happy to help you through any behavior issues. Now that you're spending more time at home, this is a good time to address some of those problems that you've been having.
Molly, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast, and we'll stay in touch, and best to you and everything that's going on.
Thank you so much for having me on today, Mark.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.